The film begins with a clear postmodern irony. Paul rummages through a pile of junk, scavenging for something useful. A man runs down an alley as alarm sirens blare in the background. Military patrols are visible, and gunshots are heard. Once in the countryside, Paul casts a final glance at the smoke-engulfed city and heads to a shelter where he has hidden 2 screaming infants. 15 years pass, and Paul now lives with his teenage sons and a dog in a remote area, cut off from the world by a deep crevice in the earth. One day, Thomas almost fails to return before dark from neighboring Rose's farm, which frightens his father. At home, the 3 of them meticulously close the windows with shutters from the inside, securing them with bolts for safety, and then they dine. At the table, Paul warns his son that if he is late again, he will no longer be allowed beyond the property's boundaries. Joseph provokes his brother with questions about their interest in the neighbors, leading to a minor argument. Their father authoritatively quells it. The remainder of the evening is spent playing chess. When the dog begins scratching the floor, Paul and Thomas go downstairs. Suddenly, someone tries to break through the boarded-up door, forcing them to barricade it. When the noise subsides, Paul cautiously peers through a peephole, seeing no one. Joseph, who stayed upstairs, reports that the uninvited guest had tried to break the door down 3 times. In the morning, they see huge claw marks on the door. As they pry off the damaged board to replace it, Paul discovers a pile of giant cockroaches. During the day, the family goes about their usual activities. Joseph is eager to indulge in his hobby in the shed, but his father first instructs him to chop wood. Later, Paul visits his son, who is working on a car. They discuss the incident, supposedly caused by environmental pollution. Some creatures had come to cleanse the planet of humanity. Paul believes that enough people have survived to eventually reunite, and sooner or later, they will be rescued from this farm. When Paul helps start the engine based on experience, they take Thomas with them and set off on a trip. Afterward, Thomas wants to run to Rose's farm, but his father first instructs him to gather supplies using the car, and the visit can wait until tomorrow. On the way, Thomas accuses Joseph of needing supervision. The brothers argue, eventually agreeing to split up and meet at sunset. Thomas heads to the farm, supposedly to finish repairing a table. In reality, he is visiting the farmer's daughter, Charlotte. She takes him to a tree where she used to play as a child, using a rope tether to extend the radius allowed by her parents. They discuss possible apocalypse scenarios, like a poisonous fog or an infection from an unknown virus transmitted by insect bites. They embrace goodbye as the sun nears the horizon. Meanwhile, Joseph is on the riverbank, exploring an abandoned grounded ship. Descending into the hold, he finds supplies and a nest of large bugs, the same kind that swarm their door at night. Their presence forces him to retreat. On the shore, the car struggles to start, making Joseph anxious as he counts on his fingers how much time remains until sunset. He drives back, unaware that Thomas, attempting to jump over the crevice, slipped, hit his head on a rock, and fell down. Not waiting for his brother, Joseph returns home alone. Paul locks up the house and, grabbing a backpack with supplies, sets out to search for his wayward son, promising to return by morning. Armed with a knife, he and his faithful dog head into the forest. Thomas regains consciousness at the bottom of the ravine. He tries to find an exit, illuminating the way with a piezoelectric lighter, but to no avail. Hearing the rustling of awakened creatures, Thomas pulls out a penknife, but it doesn't save him from a monster's attack, which thrusts a paw through a hole in the ground. Help arrives in time as his father, hearing the commotion, attacks and kills the beast before descending to his son with a torch. Ensuring Thomas is not seriously injured, Paul decides to stay in the cave until dawn, blocking the passage with stones to prevent creatures from getting through. At home, Joseph dozes off in a chair, not noticing that the viewing window had opened from the outside. A long paw of a monster intrudes through the gap, reaching for the boy with clawed fingers. The sharp claws extend to indecent lengths. It manages to open the shutters from the inside to get into the house through the window, but this turns out to be a clever trap set by Joseph. He captures the uninvited guest in a homemade cage dropped from the ceiling. In the cave, Paul instructs his son to remove one of the stones from the barricade to check if any monsters have collapsed. But as soon as he sticks his hand with the torch through, he is attacked and drops the light source. At that moment, the ground begins to give way, as if something is digging underneath. Paul lights a flare and shoves a gas canister into the hole, instructing Thomas to press against the wall. Paul knocks the cap off the canister, causing an explosion. Looking out the window in the morning and not seeing his relatives, Joseph sets off in the car to search for them. Thomas digs out the resulting landslide, pulling out his injured father, while the faithful dog, having found the brother, indicates where to go. Joseph and his brother load their injured father onto the cart and head home, carrying him to the bedroom. Confused and tormented by guilt, Thomas learns that his brother caught one of the monsters at night. Joseph covers the box with fabric and does not allow it to be removed, so as not to harm the captive unnecessarily. It will be useful for study. Treating their father's wounds, Thomas suggests they get rid of the prisoner to eliminate a potential threat. The brothers approach the cage with a knife, but due to another quarrel, they simply release the creature outside. It fearfully hides under the bed, away from the light. When the monster emerges, the dog runs into the room and attacks it, provoking a counterattack. Joseph presses the weakened creature to the floor with a mop, and Thomas, grabbing an axe, chops off its head. Practical Thomas wonders if the monster can be consumed as food. Joseph performs an autopsy to understand how the creature is structured. His brother distracts him from his work, suggesting they transport their father to Rose's farm, where there are adults and medicines. Joseph doubts that strangers will want to help them, but Thomas insists. Loading their father into the truck bed, the brothers head to the neighbors. Charlotte's parents immediately turn them away, saying they don't have enough supplies to waste on strangers. Mrs. Rose allows Thomas to stay with them, but his brother and father must return home. Disappointed, Joseph walks to the car. When Thomas runs after him, he accuses him of negligence, that is, killing their father. The argument escalates into a fight. Thomas nearly strangles his brother, but comes to his senses in time. Coughing, Joseph leaves, while Thomas stays at his girlfriend's farm, where he is offered something to eat. However, he has to force himself to swallow. Afterwards, they retreat to a room assigned to him, but an unexpected visit from the girl's father spoils all the romance. On his way home, Joseph notices the sheep in the pasture behaving strangely, as if something has scared them. Near the house, he sees a furrow in the ground leading to the basement entrance. After dragging their injured father into the house, Joseph walks around, tapping the floor to check for hollows beneath. When it's time to close the windows and doors, he suddenly falls into a pit in the middle of the kitchen, dug by cunning monsters. Meanwhile, Charlotte finds Thomas rummaging through drawers, looking for medicine for his father. Not wanting to stay as a guest and abandon his family, he convinces his girlfriend to share the medications, which she reluctantly does, unaware that one of the workers is eavesdropping on their conversation. With the pills in hand, Thomas runs home, but a watchman with a shotgun ambushes him on the road. The farm workers tie him up, accusing him of theft. The man who caught him threatens to shoot his leg, but suddenly falls into a fresh pit. A monster jumps out of the hole after him. Hearing the noise, Charlotte's father wants to check what is happening, but monsters have already invaded the home. Surprised by the sudden attack, he drops a candle, igniting a fire. The mother runs to warn her daughter, but a monster catches up with her, knocks her to the floor, and infects her, possibly for reproduction. Frightened, Charlotte steps out of the room into the hallway, where she sees a bloody trail leading to a monster, frozen in a strange pose, still alive but seemingly disemboweled. In the barn, Thomas asks the workers to untie him as they are dragged off one by attacking creatures. Abandoning the captive, the men run outside, only to fall prey to a fresh batch of monsters. Thomas manages to break a wooden bar to which he was tied, but a monster snaps its hungry jaws in front of him. Suddenly, its head explodes into pieces. Charlotte appears to the side with a shotgun, grabbing the medicine. The teenagers run out into the night, illuminated by flashes of fire from the burning house. Joseph carefully seals the hole in the floor with furniture and household items when he hears a knock on the door. Hammer in hand, he goes to check. Suddenly, the peephole opens, and outside, Thomas hand gropes for the latch. The brother and his girlfriend climb into the house through the window, recounting what happened. The brothers awkwardly reconcile as Paul comes too. Joseph informs him of the events, asking what they should do now. Logically, the father advises them to fight back. Following his guidance, the teenagers, under Joseph's leadership, head to the barn. They transport canisters of gasoline into the house and store them in the refrigerator, while Joseph prepares a trap, spreading gasoline around and making a detonator from a smoldering cigarette. Thomas and Charlotte barricade the kitchen to prevent the monsters from scattering throughout the house. Soon, the creatures begin their assault, shaking the debris over the hole in the floor. Thomas with a knife and Charlotte with a shotgun wait near the kitchen door. When the first one climbs through the boarded-up door, Thomas stabs it, and Charlotte blows the head off the second one. They then run upstairs, where Joseph is putting the final touches on the trap. Paul, having recovered, comes out of the bedroom, takes the shotgun from Charlotte, and shoots to create a hole down to the first floor. He then stands in the doorway, silently striking the intruders with a bat. When one critter breaks through, the brothers beat it down with makeshift materials, making their father almost shed a proud tear. The teenagers head to the bedroom, where a shelter has been made out of the refrigerator. Paul locks the door from the outside to delay the creatures. The monsters break down the door and burst into the room, but then the fire reaches the gasoline, causing an explosive reaction. The teenagers wait out inside the freezer, which eventually tips over. Emerging outside, they try to find their father among the ruins. Suddenly, a burning hand breaks through the debris. Frightened, the teenagers run to the car. Hastily starting the engine, they drive away from the burning house where they spent their brief lives. The surviving monsters pursue them, grouped into an infernal burning wheel. Charlotte fires the shotgun before the terrifying chase disintegrates. Stopping to catch their breath, the teenagers see the mesmerizing sight of the starry sky for the first time in their lives. In the morning, gathering the remains, they bury their parents under Charlotte's tree. Deciding what to do next, the teenagers get into the car and set off in search of other survivors like them. Behind the car stretches Charlotte's old rope tether, which snaps from tension, a symbolic umbilical cord. Now they are on their own. The car drives off into the distance with the joyful dog running alongside. The film ends here.